Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark, and coming up on today's episode, it's going to be music focused because I'm joined by the Alice in Chains frontman William DuVall. I'm absolutely blown away that I've got him on the show, and I can't wait to share the interview with you all because it's something very, very special, and we get to talk all about his brand new solo album, One Alone. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, which you all have come to know by now, I like to touch base and talk about my previous guest. So I was joined by the podmaster himself, Scott Mosier. This interview was a long time coming. I had a strong feeling that this interview would do well because of viewer skew and Kevin Smith and the whole Smodcast community, but I was not prepared for just how well this interview was going to take off. After 24 hours of this episode being out, it had received more downloads than any other podcast that I've put out after 72 episodes. It's topped Mads Mikkelsen, it's topped Anthony Hopkins, it's even topped Steven Guttenberg, which was a huge guest to get on the show. So I'm blown away. I've never had so many messages, emails, a lot of people as well saying, can you get some more from Scott? So maybe I will, maybe I won't. But yeah, the response couldn't have been better, and I'm grateful for everyone taking the time to listen to that episode. If you haven't, and this is the first time you've tuned into Mark and Me, go back, because there's another 71 episodes out there with a huge range of different guests within pop culture. But let's get back into today's episode. So as I said at the start, the Alice in Chains frontman William DuVall is here. I can't wait for this interview to be shared with you. I've shown two of my friends this interview so far, and they think it's some of the best work I've done, and William is such a great guest. So enough teasing, let's get straight to it. Here is me and William DuVall talking all things music. So thank you for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thank you for having me.
What I want to do, William, is take it right back to the start. So when you were growing up, did you want to be a musician at a very young age, or did it come a bit later in life?
Wanting to be a musician came fairly early in life. That started at 8 years old. It seems like there was very little time in my life where I wanted to be anything else. Yeah, for about as long as I can remember. This was it.
Were you in a band, or did you have a guitar at a very young age? Did your parents, buy you something to make you know at 8 that you wanted to be a musician?
I found a really beat up nylon string guitar in my grandmother's basement, and I had just started sort of plucking around on that. As fate would have it, right around that time, I had an older cousin that moved in with my mother and me. So I was 8 and he was 18. So 10 years difference. He was sort of in need of a place to stay. He sort of had a difficult home life with his folks. And this is in Washington, D.C. So my mother had been a school teacher there, and she was sort of in the DC public school system, and so she was always trying to help kids, and my cousin Donald obviously was family, so it was absolutely a no-brainer for us to take him in, and so it was just the three of us in this little apartment in Southwest DC, and Donald brought his record collection with him, which was just a small box of records, vinyl LPs. Though the collection was small, it was actually pretty great. We had all kinds of things in there, from Santana to Roy Ayers, Weather Report. And then the one that really caught me was the Hendrix Band of Gypsies album.
Wow.
And so I remember one day he put that on, and really almost immediately it just sort of captured my attention. I started asking him all these questions, because I'm hearing all these wild sounds come out of out of my little show and tell record player. And interestingly, the album, a lot of Donald's record albums had no covers. They were missing the covers. You know, they'd been sort of strewn about, I guess, in his previous home. So he had taken the white paper sleeves, and he often would just sort of draw his own imaginative visuals onto the white paper sleeves. But I say that to say that I was listening to this amazing music, but I had no idea what Hendrix looked like.
Right.
And so for, you know, a week or so, we just listened to this record every day, all day for the most part. And I was just so fascinated with it, and bombarding Donald with all these questions about, like, what, how is he doing that with all of that with a guitar? Like, I can't believe it, you know? And, you know, because Machine Gun, you know, I've got, you know, bombs going off, and you know, rice paddies being strafed, and villagers being napalmed, and all, you know, just everything coming from a guitar. I just couldn't believe it. And he was trying to explain, you know, everything about Stratocasters and Marshall stacks and feedback and all of that. But anyway, at some point, Donald went to the library, because this was 1976. We didn't have any internet, obviously. It was just dial it up instantly. And so he went to the library, and he photocopied old issues of Rolling Stone with photographs of Hendrix in it, and brought them back to the apartment. And so I saw these photographs, and I just was even more blown away. He was like, oh my God, he looks just like us. Like, this is so, you know. So that was pretty much it for me. I knew right at that point, it was like, oh, this is something that this is something I need to look into doing. I mean, I just want to. Once again, fate intervened, and we saw in the television listings that week that Monterey Pop was coming on, the film of Monterey Pop.
Yeah.
D.A. Pennybaker's great film document of that festival. And so Donald had made these plans with this friend of his who lived a few blocks away, and to come over to that friend's apartment and watch it. And the friend, you know, treated this like a big deal as well. He actually even rented a television set for the occasion. You know, it was one of these huge 70s floor model televisions that was, you know, the size of a, you know, bureau or a desk of drawers or something. You know, it was just this huge thing. And we all went over to that guy's apartment, and you know, of course, the older guys, they all lit up. You know, they're all there smoking whatever they want to smoke, and I'm just this little kid, you know, just with these older dudes. But you know, I was pretty hip, you know, and we just watched this movie, and we waited and waited, and finally Hendrix came on, and oh my God, if I was captured before, once I saw Wild Thing with the whole sacrifice and the lighter fluid on the guitar and setting it on fire and smashing it and everything, I just was like, oh yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. It's like, at that point it was like, what else would you do with your life? I mean, this is it. This is what you do, you know, this is it. So yeah, that was it for me. That was the beginning.
And you're only 8 at this point. I mean, it's, you know, what a start. Most kids at 8 don't even know what they're doing. They're playing in the streets. They're just pissing around, and you're there listening and watching Jimi Hendrix. I mean, that's the best foundations you can ask for.
I agree completely. I was incredibly lucky. It was life-changing, and it was perfect timing, and yeah.
So when I was doing some research on your music and finding out about your first gig, I can't believe you were lucky enough to see the Weather Report as your first ever live music experience. So tell me about this gig.
They were touring the Heavy Weather album, which was sort of their commercial breakthrough album, I guess. You know, they had been a band for some time. They put out several records, all of which were great, and they'd had several lineup changes. But by the time they got to Heavy Weather in '77, that was the album that sort of broke them through to another level critically and commercially. And that was the lineup that had, obviously, Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter, the founders of the band, but it had Jaco Pastorius on bass at his absolute prime. And so, you know, I got turned on to Jimi Hendrix, the great genius of the guitar, the electric guitar. And then almost simultaneously, I got turned on to the greatest genius of the electric bass, you know, the Hendrix of the electric bass, Jaco Pastorius. And unlike Hendrix, who had already departed this earth, you know, several years before, Jaco was still very much alive and well, young man, like I said, in his absolute prime. And I got to see him in concert with all the other, you know, amazing members of Weather Report. I think that was the band that had Alex Acuna on drums, and it had Manolo Badrina playing percussion, and just so it was, and of course Zawinul and Wayne Shorter are geniuses in their own right, and so it was just, that show was, it blew my mind completely. And you know, and it was a combination of watching the band and of course Jaco, but it was also being surrounded by the reaction of the audience too, and just all these people really turned on and tuned in to the music coming from the stage. And once again, people were lighting up in the crowd. They weren't, you know, they weren't shy.
Yeah.
You know, smoking their joints and everything, and trying to enhance their experience. So I'm getting this contact high from marijuana smoke. I'm watching Jaco up there, and his fingers just look like spiders going across the bass, and Zawinul would get so worked up, he would just, you know, he would jump up off the piano stool, and the stool would go flying across the stage, and it was just unbelievable, man. The whole thing was unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, concerts and record collecting, and really intense listening to records all became a part of my life at the same time, all through Donald. Yeah.
So then in the early 80s, you were more of a kind of in the hardcore punk scene. So you were playing in bands like Awareness, Void of Chaos. A bit later on, you were in Neon Christ. So why was that change and shift? Was it the fact that even though you loved that music, you wanted to create something different?
Yeah, it was. I think what the introduction of the hardcore music in the early 80s did was similar to what the previous generation of 70s punk rock did for people a bit older than I was. It let you see that being in a band and writing your own songs was not something that you had to wait to get some sort of certification or some sort of anointing to do. It was something you could do right now, and with hardcore especially, you know, it was just this idea that like very, very young people could do it. So even though I was about 14 years old, I was like, I saw Black Flag in the decline of Western civilization, the film, you know, and I saw some of the other bands in that movie. It was just like, oh, well, you know, I don't know. I don't want to wait anymore. I want to do this right now. Yeah, you know, the energy of that music, the sense of danger, the sense of like, oh my God, the gigs are just insane in LA. I mean, people they're going off so hard. Like, man, you could go to a gig and it's just violence just breaks out immediately. And then the fact that it upset the authority figures so much, you know, that parents and police and just city governments, like everyone in that position of power hated that music so much.
Yeah.
So all of those things were sort of galvanizing to me, very, very inspiring. And Greg Ginn from Black Flag specifically, he was just so advanced. His guitar playing was so innovative, and it actually had a lot in common to me with some of the free jazz that I was listening to by that point. Because by about 11, 12 years old, I'd started getting into people like Ornette Coleman and James Blood Ulmer, and also on the other side, in the rock equation, I'd sort of started getting into the Stooges and the MC5, and of course the MC5 and the Stooges both had their own ties to free jazz music. The Five had a great relationship with Sun Ra, and the Stooges were hugely inspired by people like Coltrane and a lot of the more out stuff that he did, and Albert Ayler too. And I just started connecting all these dots, and it was just such a wonderful time of discovery and exploration. And again, it just made me feel like, wow, I don't have to wait to get into this. I can dive into this right now, even as a really young person. Like, it was sort of a clarion call.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward a few years, and what I wanted to know is, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the year 2000 you first met Jerry Cantrell, is that right?
Yeah.
Cool. Now,
that's right.
Were you actually a fan of Alice in Chains, or was this a new, when you met him, were you like, wow, that's Jerry, or were you just not really a big fan of that sort of band at the time, or?
No, I liked Alice in Chains. I liked all the Seattle, the music that was coming out of Seattle. I guess the, sort of
Soundgarden, Pearl Jam,
the Big Four,
yeah, Nirvana.
I guess they call the metal, Metallica and Megadeth on the Big Four, but whatever. I had become familiar with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice, and of course Soundgarden, who I thought were great, and I liked all that music. Yeah, I dug it all. So I had the records, and of course I had been a part of the underground culture that had sort of paved the way for all of that Seattle, the music that exploded out of Seattle to even be possible, right? I mean, and to have that much commercial success. I'd been a part of the seeding of the soil. If you will.
Yeah.
So prepare the country for a more raw, energetic music, and of course, stage diving and moshing and all that stuff, But yeah, I liked what those guys were doing with it. I liked what Cobain had done with some of the punk and pop influences, and I liked what Alice and Soundgarden were doing with with more metal influences, and so I dug all that stuff. I dug it all, and when Comes With the Fall moved to LA from Atlanta in February 2000, Cantrell was one of the first people that we met, and it was a great time.
So how did it become that you got this chance to kind of audition? I know that you stood in and did the I think it was the was it the Video Hits 1, wasn't it? The Decades Rock? I remember the performance. It must have been like, did you have to kind of sit there and dwell on, shall I do this? Because you got such big kind of shoes to fill, or were you just like, fucking give me this opportunity, I want to do it now?
Well, prior to the Decades Rock Live TV special, my band Comes With the Fall had actually toured with Cantrell for a couple years on the road. So when Cantrell and I met in 2000, he started hanging out with us immediately.
Yeah.
We all sort of, the four members of Comes With the Fall, lived in this 2-bedroom apartment in West Hollywood, and he was over at our place all the time. And He even learned several of our songs, and he would jump on stage and play guitar with us on those songs. So I would teach him these tunes in the kitchen off of our first album, and he would play them with us. And everywhere we were in Hollywood, everywhere we were taking every gig we could get, and he would always be there. People thought he was joining our band. He even stood in on bass with us. He played bass with us one time because our bass player got locked up in Atlanta, and we had a gig at the Cat Club on Sunset in Hollywood, and Cantrell was like, I'll play bass. And it was a really close thing that we had at that point. And he was also finishing his Degradation Trip album at the time. Again, this is 2000. And so he wanted to play some shows, and I think he saw in Comes with the Fall, not only were we the most vicious band playing around town at that time, and we had such an attitude because we'd come from Atlanta, and we had been through so much in Atlanta, and once we got to LA, we were sort of on fire to just lay waste to that place and to all of the kind of the attitude that most bands in LA at that time had, which was, we're here to be signed, we're here to be discovered, we're here to showcase, Comes with the Fall didn't have anything to do with that. We most bands were projects and they played showcases. We were a band and we played gigs and we put out records. We weren't waiting for anybody to come and discover us or do anything for us. And in fact, every meeting that we took with major labels, to me, was a joke because I just knew I was just going to end up arguing and debating with these people all the time about what my band sounded like and what we were supposed to be doing and how we were supposed to be doing it. And I wasn't prepared to debate anybody about any of those things. So I think Cantrell saw that attitude, and he saw the all for one, one for all thing that we had, the living hand to mouth and living sort of all together like that. And he missed that kind of thing. Probably brought him back to the beginnings of Alice, and so that plus the fact that, like I said, we were destroying every place we played. He was like, well, I got to play some shows. Would you guys want to go on the road with me? And I was like, well, yeah, we'll do it if we can also open the gigs and sell all our stuff. And then, so we did double duty for like 2 years. We would come out and play our set as Comes to the Fall. Then we'd run backstage and cool off for a second. And we'd come right back out and play his set with him. We did it, like I said, 2001, 2002, all of 2001 and 2002 throughout the U.S. And we came over to the UK as well. Played, freaking Bradford and Wolverhampton. We did a proper UK tour, man. We went into the hinterlands and everything. And, it was cool. It was really cool. So there was a lot going on prior to the Decades Rock thing.
That's cool, yeah.
By the time we get to that, it was like, I had put in a lot of miles with Dude there. We were pretty together.
It makes sense now why he I think he's gone on record and said that it only took one audition for you to get the gig, because you've obviously become sort of brothers on the road. You must have had a tight unit, shared some amazing experiences, and just have so much love and respect for each other. It was just natural for you to just step in.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was it like then when you went on stage and you had all those people and you sang that opening line to Rooster? You must have been like, it made the hair stick up on my... I was dubious, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and be fake and be like, oh, I couldn't wait. I was like, how is this going to work? What's it going to be like? There's honesty for you. I was like, this is big shoes to fill. Lena's one of the best vocals out there. And I saw you at Download. I'm thinking it's like 12 years ago or something now, Donington. Yeah. And the moment you came on stage and that first note you sang, I was sold. I was like, fucking hell, take all my money, here you go, this is it, you know?
Yeah, right on. Yeah, well, I mean, the Decades Rock thing in New Jersey was a trip, because it was the first thing, it was the first thing we did. And it's in an arena, first of all, and an arena in New Jersey, and it's on television, so
no pressure.
Exactly. It was sort of like, wow, okay, we're really jumping right in, aren't we? And it was this kind of all-star thing, because the special was actually Hart's gig, the Wilson sisters. It was they were being honored by VH1, and they invited Alice to be a part of it, but even the Alice in Chains section of the program was supposed to be sort of an all-star gathering in and of itself. So it was the Wilson sisters with their own all-star gathering being honored, and then the Alice portion had its own sort of all-star component, and Phil Anselmo had come over to sing a song, and we had and then Ann Wilson herself was actually supposed to sing Rooster that night. And earlier in the day they were doing the camera rehearsal, and Ann had not made it downstairs yet, and so they were like, well, we got to get this camera blocking done, and so they just asked me, well, can you sing it? So we started in, and in the middle of the song, Ann and Nancy came down, and I saw them in the wings, the stage, while we were doing it. And afterward, Ann was like, oh, you got to sing that. You got to sing that song, which was very kind of her, because that was supposed to be her big moment on her show, with their own, with the Wilson sisters sort of fellow Seattleite band, Alice in Chains. And she gave it over to me. It was really great. It was really great. And it ensured me a spot in the television show, which ended up being our introduction, our coming out party, for what we were going to do for the next, well, now it's been 13 years, going on 14 years.
So obviously since that time you've had some more studio albums, you've been writing, you're part of the band, you're the family now. It couldn't have gone better. I think Rainier Fog was easily one of my favourite albums last year. It was great to hear what you were doing, but the time's come now where you felt that you wanted to bring out your first solo debut album. Now, what was it that made you, at this point now, 13 years later into Alice, to go, I want to bring out my own stuff?
Well, it was just time. As you say, so much work has been done with Alice, and obviously prior to that, I put out a bunch of albums with Comes With the Fall.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, I did the Giraffe Tongue Orchestra record with Ben Wyman from Dillinger Escape Plan and Brent Hines from Mastodon. So there've been quite a catalog of work that I was extremely proud of, both with Alice in Chains and also outside of Alice in Chains, but it was all sort of it was all these band-oriented, sort of aggressive, high-energy, electric rock records. And when you look at my entire history, as you say, we've gone back to the beginning, just in this discussion. We're talking about 35 years or so of very aggressive, band-oriented rock music, you know, and there were even a lot of things like in the late 80s and early 90s, sort of post-hardcore but pre-Comes the Fall, that we didn't even touch on, that also play a really important role in my development. But all of it, again, band, electric, maybe acoustic guitar plays a role in the music, but it's more of like a color. It's more of a seasoning. You know, it's not the main focus. And so I thought, well, after all these years of doing that kind of thing, you know, dynamic electric rock and roll, let's break it all the way down to the barest essentials: one guitar and one voice all the way through for an entire album, and let's see what happens. And that's the One Alone album. And I thought, and let's put it out under my own name, because it just seemed, I don't know, it just didn't seem right for me to try to come up with some pseudonym or something. You know, I've never put out an album under my own name. I never particularly envisioned doing it. I've always been a band guy for my whole life, but just the nature of this particular album, One Alone, it just felt like the most honest thing to do was just to surrender to the idea of like, well, look, you know, I am who I am. I've you know, I've gone out here for a lot of years now, and you know, it put in a lot of road miles and hit a lot of stages, you know, stomped a lot of boards, and as this thing, this person, you know, William DuVall, might as well just own that whole thing. And so here we are, and it was a strange thing at first, but I've actually warmed to it quite a bit and feel really good about it now. I mean, I always felt good about the album, but I just mean the idea of putting out a record under my own name and just all of that stuff, everything that goes with that, you know. I don't know, I was always so used to promoting bands that at first there was a lot of trepidation about just promoting myself as this solo artist. But again, the One Alone album speaks for itself. I just couldn't see my way clear to do it any other way. And so now, I feel good about all of it, you know, not just the music, but just the idea of doing records under my own name.
What I love most about it is the contrast. So you've done all these bands, you know, you think of all the bands like Madfly and all these big heavy sets, and now you've stripped it down, and I think you just said only a moment ago, it's one voice, one guitar, and for me it's got that feel of the way that someone like Bob Dylan used to do it. It would just be alone doing it, and it sounds perfect and it works, and I think it will surprise quite a few people because it's so minimal. But how rare is that nowadays, just to have that raw element of just the power of one acoustic guitar and one fucking awesome voice, and it just, that's all it needs. I think less is more.
Right on. Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's it. The question for me was, can this work? Can these songs stand up to that presentation, and can that particular presentation hold up for an entire album? And again, I think the audience is always the final judge of all of that, but from where I was standing, it held up well enough for me to say, yeah, I'm gonna put this out. This is what makes sense for me to do right now, and I'm gonna go ahead with it and put it out and let the audience be be the judge of it. And it holds up as a listening experience. I felt like perhaps this is the kind of album that one could listen to in their most quiet, introspective moments.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I thought, well, you know, best case scenario, maybe this album could become a friend to somebody. You know, just like so many albums by people I love, artists I love, have become a friend to me, you know.
I think it can become such a big part for someone. I already kind of picture when the vinyl arrives, me coming in, having a shit day at work, but I put the vinyl on, I sit down, and it's just me and you're singing to me, and there's the guitar, and it's like you're playing in the room. That's the kind of feel I get, because there's none of this overproduced stuff, there's none of these big harmonies and choir and bloody string sections. It's literally just you and the guitar, and I'm sure when it came to the production you wanted to keep it as if it's that live performance feel. I'm sure you didn't sit there and do overdub and overtake and all this. It's so well done. I'm sure, did it take not that long to record? I can imagine it being quite a quick production for you.
Yeah. The genesis of the album was 8 songs recorded in one day.
One day?
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah. So I went in initially to do what I thought was going to be just a demo for the song Till the Light Guides Me Home, which is the first single, ended up being the first single of this album. And that went down so quickly that I thought, well, I'm here, I'm in the studio, why don't I just lay down a few more? So yeah, I did 7 more and walked out that evening with 8 songs and felt pretty good about it. And was, you know, kind of listening to those off and on, driving around or whatever, and thought, yeah, this sort of sits together pretty nicely. All these tunes like this. This is pretty cool. And so I went back in sometime later and just did several more in an evening. And so that's the One Alone album. That's it. 2 sessions.
That's what, you must be every sound engineer's dream. I'm thinking now, what's next? Are you planning to tour it and get across the world and just be you and a guitar and, you know, play these songs in nice intimate venues?
That's it, exactly. Yeah. So got a bunch of US dates booked for this fall 2019, and then early 2020, and then right now I'm looking at getting over to the UK and Europe also in early part of 2020. Still have to kind of finalize a lot of those dates, but that's kind of the aim right now, is to do exactly what you said, just get around the world, very intimate venues, myself and a guitar, that's it, and just see what we can do with that, you know, kind of bring the One Alone experience to everyone live.
How does it feel? Does it feel quite intimidating because it's just you and you don't have that band, you know, that backing band with you and the friends that have been on the road, or is it quite an exciting feeling to know that it's literally a one-man show?
It's both. It's nerve-wracking and it's exciting. And I'm hoping that the nerve-wracking part will dissipate over time, and it'll just be sort of like, oh, no, this is great. You know, this isn't so bad at all. I'm hoping it'll be a little bit like getting over that trepidation of putting out a record under my own name. It'll just sort of, the show will just be yet another thing that I can do and feel pretty good about. So yeah, but yeah, right now it's still so like, what? It's like, wow, yeah, this is real. Like, I got dates booked. Like the US shows for the fall went on sale over this past week or so, and it's like, yeah, it's real now. We're selling tickets.
You can't back out now, man.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
I really, really can't wait for you and to get over here, and I really hope there's some UK dates in the early of next year, and I'll be the first one there, and I hope I get to share a beer with you and see this show, because if I can hear these songs live, I think it'll be fucking awesome, and I really do wish you the best with this release.
Thank you so very much. That means a lot, really. Thank you.
The one thing I always do for this podcast is ask the guests to pick the outro music. You can have any song in the whole world to be played. How's that to put you on the spot? But is there a song that you'd like to end this episode with?
Wow. Ooh, wow. Just anybody.
Whatever comes to your heart, where you think, fuck yeah, that's my song.
Well, I mean, obviously there's so many records and so many songs that I love so much. But, well, for just for this particular discussion and having left off with discussing the One Alone record, why don't we end with something from Buckley? Yeah, that'd be cool.
You know what, Jeff Buckley, this is fucking spooky. So I spoke and interviewed his manager, Dave Laurie, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
and I put out a special about his book, which is fucking brilliant. And last week, obviously, the estate started releasing all these rare recordings and live performances that we've never got before. But I've actually interviewing tomorrow night his official photographer, Mary. And we're sitting down and we're going to have a massive talk about what it was like with Jeff. And he's literally my most favourite artist, and Grace is my favourite album of all time.
Oh, wow. Well, that's so fantastic. I actually read Dave Laurie's book, and it brought back a lot of memories. I saw, Buckley and I had some mutual friends in New York, and when No Walls, my band from about 88 to 92, we went to New York in 1990 because, Vernon Reid from Living Colour brought No Walls to New York because he was trying to get us signed. He was, Living Colour was a very hot band at that time, and so Vernon was trying to use whatever clout he had to bring the industry to us, and so we played all these gigs around New York and everything, and I actually, for whatever reason, Buckley hadn't quite moved to New York by 1990. He hadn't gotten there yet, but yeah, I ended up meeting a lot of people that would end up playing with him and so on. And then right when No Walls broke up, I started hearing about this guy, Jeff Buckley, who was Tim Buckley's son. And No Walls used to get compared to Tim Buckley by, real sort of muso types.
Yeah.
Quite often. And so I was like, oh, who's this guy, And when he first started touring around with Dave, just driving him, the two of them alone, I went and saw him at a place called Eddie's Attic, it's just outside Atlanta, and about 5 people in the audience, and I was one of them, and I brought a friend of mine, the old drummer of Neon Christ, came with me, Jimmy Deemer, and we watched Buckley. He was sort of sitting around at the bar, and then he just sort of walked over, and he had this little tiny Fender amp and a Telecaster, and he just had a bottle of Guinness, and he took a swig off it, set it down on the ground, and stood there and just killed it. Like, it was just such a strange and funny thing to watch this guy who was doing this really, really intense kind of jazz, rock, and folk and world music thing all combined, but it was just him and a guitar, and there was nobody in the room, and he's just really going off on his own trip. I mean, he was trying to get into, kind of almost like an ecstatic state. He sort of, again, we had a lot of common influences, because he had the Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan thing. He had he had all this stuff going on. He was trying to get into, where it was about getting to a higher spiritual place, and I just remember thinking, like, wow, like, yeah, this cat is something. And I went and saw him the next night. He played downtown Atlanta in a place on Trinity Avenue, and I went down there and met him and stuff. And and it was a trip too, because the singer from the Cocteau Twins was there as well. She was watching the gig too, I don't know if they were playing in town or whatever, but I know she and Buckley kind of became pretty close, and I saw them together at that thing. I don't know if they were meeting for the first time or if they'd already known each other or what, but I remember seeing that too. And yeah, so anyway, Dave Lord's book brought back a lot of memories, and yeah.
He's the one.
But yeah, I suppose we could if you have do you have the expanded live at Shanae?
I've got everything he's ever released. I'm a nerd. I've got signed CDs. I've got his final tour pass that Dave gave me for doing the interview.
Okay, well, if you really have everything, then you might know that you have there's a B-side, and it's Lover You Should Have Come Over, recorded acoustic live in Japan.
Yeah, that's fucking one of my favourite versions.
That's my outro music.
No, that's the one.
The version of Love You Should Have Come Over, where they're playing acoustic live in Japan. Him and the band playing acoustic live in Japan. That was my outro.
Flawless.
Yeah.
Man, I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know your time is sacred and you've got a lot on today, but I just want you to know how much I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you so much,
man. And when I hear you announce some UK dates, and I want to come and meet you, and we're going to have a beer.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it. Awesome.
But thanks again for coming on, and good luck with the album, and hopefully I'll stay in touch.
Right on, man. Absolutely, we will. Thank you.
Nice one, dude. Take care, buddy.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the Alice in Chains frontman, William DuVall. And as you heard, we discussed in great detail his brand new solo album, One Alone. I'm not just saying this because he's been on the show. I've been lucky enough to listen to this album, and it's fucking phenomenal. At this moment in time, it's my album of the year. It's that good. It's out this Friday, but if you're listening to this after the release, go back and get it, because it's on Spotify. You can be old school and go and buy a vinyl or a CD or listen on Apple Music. Whatever way you listen to music, go and check out One Alone. And a big thank you to William for coming on the show. He's very busy. He's touring with Alice in Chains. He's such a busy man, but he took the time out to talk to me. And for someone like me who's such a big fan, it's an honour for him to come on the show. So a huge thank you. Also, you know the score by now. You can go on markandme.com. On there's my Facebook page, my Twitter, my Instagram, and also my email. Also on there you can go on and see my Patreon page. Now this is something that gets a lot of support. I give away a lot of prizes to say thank you for all the support this podcast gets. But I can't do this podcast without your support. I don't make any money from doing Mark and Me, and all of the donations that I get on there through Patreon helps go into me travelling to get more and more guests, which means more and more interviews for you. You can go on there and actually subscribe as something as little as like $1 a month, which is nothing. And at the moment you're getting 4 episodes, which is about 25p. And that is pretty cheap. Do you know what? I was in Greg's the other day and I went to order some food and they wanted another 30p to eat the food in Greg's. That's not including the food. That's just to sit there and eat the food that you bought. And I thought to myself, fuck man, my podcast is cheaper than just having the right to sit in a Greg's. So if that's not a reason to subscribe, I don't know what is. And you might be thinking I'm going off topic. It's true. But do you know what? Out of spite, I went and sat in Starbucks and ate my Greg's in there for free, which is pretty good. There's a little tip for you. You can have that one. As always, guys, I'll be back in a week's time with a brand new episode. And I just want to say at the end of this episode today, you've had a secret. You've found out that the outro music on all Mark and Me's are actually picked by the guests themselves. That's something I haven't ever revealed in 72 episodes, but I love the talk that me and Will had all about Jeff Buckley, so I felt it was needed in this episode, and I hope you all appreciate it. And now you know why in just a few moments you're going to hear Jeff Buckley, because it's William's choice. I have 2 very good friends that have listened to this episode before it went out there. There's someone that I was lucky enough to see Alice in Chains with. It's Scott Higgins and Darren Wolfe. If you know me personally, you'll know how much I love these guys, and they're my 2 best friends. They really do mean the absolute world to me, and getting this guest was something I wanted as a present for those 2, for all the support, all the love they give this podcast, but also as just the friendship they provide me. So this podcast, and I've never dedicated a podcast, I don't think, to anyone, is dedicated to you 2. You are absolute legends, and I thank you for every day making me a better person, and I hope you've enjoyed this interview, boys. But also everyone else out there, I love you all too. I appreciate you listening, and I'll be back in a week's time with a brand new episode. Take care, guys. body turns, it yearns for a sleep that won't ever come. It's never over. My kingdom for a kiss upon her shoulder. So soft against her. Oh, it's never over. Oh, my blood for the sweetness of her laughter. Oh, it's never over. She's the tear that hurts inside my soul forever. To keep good love from going wrong. It's not too late.